I feel like I was a very unlikely candidate to make a worship record. It's not ever been a huge part of my artistry. I feel like I've got a particular thing that I do, and it's typically stayed away from some of the more explicitly spiritual kind of material like that. And but with feedback, you just never know what coordinates God's going to put in front of you and where He's going to take you and what you're going to wind up making. And I was really surprised by it. It started off almost as not a joke, but something I thought would be a really funny, a really ironic follow-up to the record I had done previous and the tour I had done previous and some of what had happened the year before. I thought a worship record would really be out of left field. And at first, that's really all it was like, oh, wouldn't that be hysterical? That would be very unexpected, maybe. But the more I thought about it, I just couldn't escape the idea. It just seemed like maybe I should try to contribute something to that conversation, because there is so much worship product out there. There are a lot of people creating art with the intention of being used for worship, and I think it's a really important subject, and I think it's gravely important that we know what we're doing, that we're thinking through why we're doing what we're doing, and the art that we're making, if it's being intended to kind of lead God's people corporately, then that's a pretty big subject, and something that I hadn't that I had spent some time thinking about, and I've got a lot of friends who are in that world, and so I started to think, so what would I do? What would be any kind of a valuable contribution to that? And I didn't imagine doing corporate worship songs for people to sing. I didn't feel like anybody needed anything like that from me. I think we have plenty of those kind of songs and people who are very gifted to do that. And so what brought me around to making Feedback, which is an instrumental record, more classically composed. It's structured differently than a pop record. It's in 3 movements, a song per line in the prayer. There's 9 lines, so there's 9 songs. A pretty abstract piece of work. What brought me around to making it that way was honestly my own experience in worship. When I go to church, the musical part of it is typically my least favorite part. And I think one of the reasons might be because a lot of the songs that are being provided at this point by a lot of artists, and a lot of whom are making great art, but for me, for my story, for my particular experience, I don't always resonate with the language that they provide. It's true of the hymns too. I mean, sometimes the hymns do, sometimes they don't. That's both a good and a bad reason for having content like that, because sometimes you come into worship and you need someone to provide words that maybe you don't believe, things that maybe you don't feel at that moment, in order that you could sing them. Someone else wrote them so that you can say them and sing them in order to help you in your unbelief, to bring you to a point where you do believe that stuff. Other times it can be kind of frustrating, because I don't walk into church at 11. I walk in at a spiritual 2 or 3 most of the time. That's why I'm there. It's been a whole week, right? And so I need maybe some less structured moments that don't dictate to me the spirit, my particular spiritual reality at that moment, but just gives me some space for the Spirit to kind of come in and heal what's been broken during the week. And there's not a lot of abstract art in the church at this point. There used to be. The architecture, the stained glass windows, a lot of the music even over many centuries has been very abstract. And so it just felt like maybe that would be an interesting contribution, to do something less structured, more abstract, that would give people some space, that did have an intention. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to meditate on, our Father in heaven. During that 3 minutes, you may start there, and that may be a jumping off place, but during 3 minutes of kind of abstract instrumental music, there's no telling where you might go. There's no telling where the Spirit might take you. And I just thought that might be an interesting thing to introduce. Maybe an interesting part of corporate worship. And I know that in the few moments of more abstract, kind of abstract moments in a corporate worship setting have been really helpful for me. And so I thought if it would be helpful for me, it might be helpful for other people if their stories were anywhere similar to mine. So that's kind of what brought me around to making Feedback.